Hello, Stanislava. Good day to you. And it's really nice to see you here in our informal online. It's a pity a little bit, but it's online discussion. And we continue our somehow as a tradition to introduce some people, to have discussions in different areas of education, possible psychology today, with different scholars from different countries. And today our guest is Professor Stanislava Yordanova Stoyanova from Bulgaria. She is from Department of Psychology, as far as I know, Southwest University Neofit Rilski, if I pronounced well, in Blagoevgrad city in Bulgaria. And Professor Stanislava has quite huge experience, about 15 years, possible more, in various of psychology in general, and psychological diagnostics, and consultancy, and she has been trained, for example, in cognitive behavioral therapy, transactional analysis, and art therapy, and many, many more areas. And obviously, she is also a lecturer at mentioned university in Bulgaria. Let's say it's possible enough for this short official introduction. And possible, Stanislava, you want to add something from your side, something important.
So I work at Southwest University in Bulgaria, Department of Psychology and Faculty of Philosophy. I work here from 2004 officially, full-time job, and earlier part-time job. And I also have some experience in working in some other universities in Bulgaria, also as an Erasmus lecturer in Spain. I have participated in different summer schools in different countries and universities, and I find this sharing of experience with international colleagues is very useful for developing further as professional. And I am glad that we could meet online virtually now. And I would like to thank Professor Vincentas Lamanauskas for the invitation to participate in our online discussion.
Thank you, Stanislava. As I said, this is online discussion because it's after COVID pandemic, it's becoming like a lifestyle in different areas of life. But it's anyway, it's really good opportunity and possibility to communicate, to share our ideas and different experiences, etc. But let's be optimistic, and I hope that in near future I will visit Bulgaria again, because I visited not so many, but sometime Bulgaria, and took part in different conferences, for example, in Varna, in Sofia, etc. And it's really nice country, and I am really. You have an idea, I have my intention to visit Bulgaria again quite soon. As we discussed before, our discussion somehow from one side, it's again traditionally, I do not like this word tradition, but traditionally consists from somehow from three parts. Let's discuss shortly about some general issues in education, possible shortly about your university, about education system in your country. And the main part for today's discussion, the main focus is learning motivation, because you are psychologist, well-known psychologist, and you're deeply involved in this, at least in this area, what is connected with learning motivation, because this is really burning topic, I would say, because we're discussing continuously about learning motivation at different levels and in different contexts. And the last part, again, traditional, this is quite important issue related to teacher education or teacher training. I would prefer to say teacher education, because it's more more relevant term. And it also would be nice to hear from your side possible some to focus a little bit on psychological aspect or in other words psychological component in teacher preparation, because quite often we're discussing about let's say content knowledge, technological pedagogical knowledge as component, but not about psychological component or how teachers are prepared from psychological point of view, etc. Okay, traditionally it would be nice, as I said shortly, to inform our not only us but also for our channel viewers possible about education system in your country. What is the education system in Bulgaria today, and can you briefly describe it, for example?
So, regarding education system in Bulgaria, I will speak about school education and university education. I will not focus on preschool education. So, from the first class, the fourth year in school, this is the primary stage of education. And at the end of this stage, the student receives a document for successful completion of this elementary primary stage of education. Then basic education continues till the 7th year at school. From 5th to the 7th is an upper educational stage. And after the 7th year at school, the students choose different type of secondary education. They could choose a secondary educational school from 8th to 12th class year at school, or from 8th to 10th year at school. So secondary education could stop after 10th year at school. It is more vocational, professionally oriented education. Or secondary education would last until 12th year at school, and after that higher education is university education is permitted to be applied. And university education includes bachelor degree 4 years at university, and master degree 1 or 2 years, and then PhD degree for about 3 years. So, concerning these university degrees, university where I work, Southwest University in Blagoevgrad in Bulgaria, in psychology offers a bachelor degree, several master's degree in criminal psychology, forensic psychology or juridical psychology, psychology of management, clinic psychology, and school psychology. Also, we offer 2 PhD degrees in pedagogical and developmental psychology T1, and work and organizational psychology, the 2nd PhD degree. So this is the typical structure of education. Different universities offer different types of PhD degrees, different types of master's degrees, and bachelor degree. And bachelor degree always starts 4 years, master's degrees for 5 years, but there are some sectors in the science, like in law, the degree is only master degree, as I know, and it lasts for 5-year education. So concerning secondary education, there are some profiled schools, like offering mathematical education or education in natural sciences, or education in sport, in music, in culture. And education in the secondary degree and primary degree is free, and university education is paid. But recently, the state decided to stimulate some specialties. And for example, as I know, at this moment, there are not educational fees for pedagogy in universities. Though more and more students are enrolled to study pedagogy to become teachers, and they don't pay any fees. And also, I would like to say that as the teacher salaries also have been increased, augmented, and pedagogy becomes a more attractive occupation for more people. But of course, to become a teacher, it should be a vocation, not only.
Yeah, but it's again a question: what is the main motivation for that? Free, non-paying, let's say, studies not for payment, or another motivation. Okay, but possible we'll discuss later in more details. This is again related to motivation anyway. And if I understood well, all other studies, for example, at university, students needs to pay, right?
Yes, there is a state grant for a limited number of students, and their payment is small. But other students that increase overcome this limited numbers granted from the state, they should pay more for their studies. So all students apply to receive grants from the state, and if they are not, they are ranked because of their, for example, success. And if they don't are approved for state-financed education, they pay for the education.
And in addition, for example, as far as I know, in Bulgaria also you have private educational sector, and possibly in all levels. I am not sure. But for example, in higher education, at least I know some universities, some private universities, and in comparison with public universities, how can you, let's say, ascertain the level of studies, quality of studies?
So there are some private and state universities. State universities, of course, are more in Bulgaria than private. And each year there is a rank of universities organized by Ministry of Education. And all universities are estimated on the same criteria. So it doesn't matter if it is a state university or if it is a private university, they are assessed on the same criteria. And I cannot see that education in private university is better or worse. I think it is comparable to the other university. In some criteria, they could be more successful. In other criteria, they could need more to achieve better results. It is valid for all universities. This ranking of universities changes every year in Bulgaria.
Obviously, and obviously not in details, but for example, what is, let's say, general opinion from students' point of view? Are they happy with study quality, or possibly they prefer to go for studies abroad somewhere? For example, like in our country, in Lithuania, it's quite popular to go abroad to study somewhere.
So, concerning students' opinion, it is very often surveyed. At different stages of education, each semester, students are asked about their opinion, about qualities of different courses, about their opinion regarding university staff, lecturers and administrative staff, about why they have chosen their specialty, anything else. So there are a lot of studies, and some of them are published officially. One of the criteria for accrediting a university a specialty is to receive such students' opinions, and also opinions by professionals working in the area. And there are some people who prefer to study abroad, and other people who choose to study in their country. It could depend on different factors. For example, how good is the student in mastering languages? Is the financial situation of the student? What is student offered as possibilities in different parts of his or her life? and some students may do these things like their peers. They just choose the same type of educational institution like their peers. So I think most students in Bulgaria stay in Bulgaria. A part of them go abroad because of different reasons, and all of them hope for better life, for better knowledge, mastering more better knowledge and skills, and they all hope to be good professionals and to achieve a good social success, to have good material conditions and so on. So it doesn't matter what is the choice. The student puts a lot of efforts to achieve the best it could be achieved in his own or her own position.
It would be nice also. Now I remember because recently it means last month, the end of September, officially we finished our project, one international Erasmus Plus project, Bridge to Teach, with some partners from different countries, for example, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Lithuania, Italy, and Austria. And our project was related. The main purpose of our project was to develop a bridging course for pre-service mathematics and science teachers. And idea was that one of the idea was that students entering universities with, let's say, lower skills or lower level of preparedness for university studies, and they need some additional preparation, additional training, for example, in mathematics and science subject like chemistry, biology, and physics. It's obviously my area. And as we discussed among colleagues, it's more or less the same situation in different countries, at least in Europe. For example, in Italy, in Austria, etc., etc. And also in Lithuania, we are observing that students entering universities, and mainly, for example, in the area of social sciences, not well prepared for university studies. What about Bulgaria, for example?
There are always some students who are motivated to learn more. They read more, put more efforts, and they learn more. They seem more well prepared. There are always some students who don't seem so well prepared. Every year it is the same. One year the students who seem not well prepared could be more. Another year the students who seem not well prepared could be less. But these students who seem not well prepared, they could advance faster if they put more efforts. For example, one student may work, and there could be some period in his or her life when the process of study is somehow neglected. But in some moment, the student could just put more efforts and could catch up, could achieve what his or her fellow students have done. So, according to the approach of constructivism, what we know and master and can is not the final situation. It could be improved. Every time in life, one person could study and learn and could improve oneself. So if the student doesn't know now, it does not mean that this is a failure and the student will not manage to learn. If the student seems not well prepared at the beginning of the school year, at the end, it could be a different situation. And I remember about Rosenthal, who defined Pygmalion's effect, that our expectations influence on the results even of different people who are estimated by us. Maybe if the lecturers, the teachers expect their student to advance, this could stimulate them to meet these expectations.
I remember some years ago, okay, time is running really quite fast, but anyway, a few years ago, we started with a new study program at master level. It was master study program education, educology in our version, and with two specializations, if I remember well, educational management and possible educational psychology, or etc. And I remember we just in very simple way in the beginning we had a short discussion with students, and students were asked about motivation, why they entered this study program. Are they motivated to become teachers in the future? And no one said that he or she was motivated. No. Some many other reasons, some other, let's say, motivational factors, but not motivation to become a teacher. It's somehow strange. The question is again how to prepare, let's say, at least good teacher during 4 years period, starting from, I would say, non-motivated to at least moderately motivated. It's really requires a lot of efforts. Okay, and possible some other for our discussion, because Bulgaria, we know, it's also a member of European Union, and all countries are different, having in mind socioeconomical status, etc. But obviously, your country has made significant progress over the past few decades in different areas of life. And however, despite this progress, your country also continues to face high levels of poverty and socioeconomic inequalities, etc. And education system has also been slower to converge with European standards compared to peer countries in the region. Can you comment shortly on this?
So, regarding this comparison between countries, I don't like them very much because they are relative. For example, I have found a lot of announcements in mass media for gold, silver, and bronze medals gained by Bulgarian students and pupils in the secondary school in different areas, in informatics, European Olympiad in informatics, International Olympiad in geography, International Olympiad in physics, International Olympiad in astronomy, and International Olympiad in linguistics, and so on. I have found about 10 such publications from this year, from the last several months. And I have found also these results from international assessment of countries regarding reading, regarding mathematics, science, and Bulgaria is sometimes in the middle. It could be in the lower middle part of the ranking of the countries, but it is not the worst. So, and even it was the worst. What? There is just a statistics. Real students are somewhere in the top, in the middle, in the lower part. Yes, the majority of them could be in the middle lower part, for example. But there are also some students who are very successful, to say, and who demonstrate good mastering of some scientific area, and who demonstrate that they put a lot of efforts. There always are some students who drop out from schools, and this is a failure of both schools, families, and educational system. And the hope is to diminish such tendency to drop out of school, to not be successful at school, and maybe ranking is not the best way to find the problem and to solve the problem, because ranking when the feedback is negative just doesn't contribute to put more efforts. There are some studies that if some people receive some negative feedback for their previous results, they perform worse after that. And there are some studies that if the people receive some positive feedback about their results, they perform even better. And there are some studies that if people are praised for their hard work, they choose further more complicated problem to solve and put more efforts to learn how to solve problems. So maybe it's not so important to rank, to compare countries and to say you are in the middle, you are at the bottom, you are at the top. It's better to find the positive for each one, to find the strengths and to find some way how to overcome some drawbacks, some imperfections. If we indicate the way how to overcome the imperfection, it is useful to focus the attention on it. If we cannot find the way to overcome an imperfection, to improve it, I consider this ranking as meaningless.
I do agree, Stanislava, with your opinion, but nowadays it's becoming, I'm talking about ranking in different areas of life, of society life. For example, also Lithuanian schools, continuously we are talking and discussing about ranking, about the best schools and not so good schools, etc., etc. Plus, having in mind, we have, for example, like a concept, what has been good school concept, and scientists, scholars also included in different ranking systems, universities as institutions, different it's require a lot of possible much more deeper discussion and
the criteria for ranking are also important. We should be sure that there is no bias in the criteria, because sometimes the criteria can be chosen in this way that always some.
Yeah, you can, for example, apply different criteria and you will receive different let's say situation, different panorama. Okay, it is clear that we can discuss about education system and different aspects for a long time, really. But let's turn into our second part, which is the main part for our today's discussion: learning motivation. Somehow it's from one side. It seems that quite simple question about discussing about learning motivation. But for example, based on my observation, when we're starting a new school year, new academic year, discussions related to learning motivation increases, enlarging quite fast. Everybody discussing at different levels, in political level, at school level, among teachers, among lecturers at university, etc., etc. Really, a lot of discussions about it, and also including obviously in public space in society. Just simple question: what is learning motivation?
To define motivation and to define learning motivation. Learning motivation is a kind of compilation of different reasons to learn, to put efforts to achieve some goals, to master some knowledge and skills. It could be a desire, a need to satisfy some need, to satisfy a need to satisfy some needs. It's kind of repetition and that I would like to avoid. But learning motivation is striving to satisfy the needs for knowledge, to achieve success, to achieve self-actualization and self-realization, to be successful, to achieve recognition as competent and successful. So learning motivation is not a simple phenomenon. includes many parts: desire, striving, need, and different actions, efforts, and so on. And learning motivation is also divided into different types that are related between them. So the behavior to learn to study is multiply motivated. Learning motivation could be different, and but being different doesn't mean that different types of motives contradict. For example, traditionally, learning motivation is defined as extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation means that we study to achieve some other goal. For example, we study to obey to our parents and teachers who require from us to study, to achieve some recognition, to be praised, to receive higher marks, to receive some grants for learning, to receive a diploma, to receive better possibilities for career advance. This is all extrinsic learning motivation. Intrinsic learning motivation means that we study because we like to study. The process of study, of learning, gives us pleasure. When we learn, we experience some positive emotions because of our activity, because we realize that our competency increase. We realize that we develop personally. And when we feel good when we learn, this is intrinsic learning motivation. But both types of motivation does not exclude each other. For example, there are some people who like their job and they are also paid for this. Also, there are some students who like learning and they are paid for this, they receive grants. So, motivation could be transformed. One type of activity could start as being extrinsic motivated. For example, one parent would make his or her child to do something because the parent wants. But later, the child could find out that what he or she makes gives pleasure to this child because the child is successful. And this motivation that started as extrinsic could continue as intrinsic. In this case, both the parent wants and the child wants because both have different motives. Also, sometimes, unfortunately, intrinsic motivation could be transformed into extrinsic. For example, as I said, when we start doing something that gives us pleasure and later we receive payment or receive praise or anything else, and step by step we continue doing this thing, the same thing, for striving more for praise than striving to achieve our pleasure. For us, this pleasure becomes connected to being praised so much that we cannot separate them, and simply doing the action without receiving recognition is not enough anymore for us. So this type of motivation are related. Also, there are different types of motivation according to the degree of autodetermination. For example, motivation means that we feel helpless, and we stop trying to achieve something. We lose the control over the result of our behavior. This is, I think, the only type of lacking of motivation when there are not any links with the other possible types of motivation, being unmotivated. Also, external regulation, when we act to achieve some praise, to receive some benefits, or to avoid punishment, is also a form of motivation. Introactive regulation, when we act to avoid feeling shame, to avoid feeling guilt, to avoid threatening our self-esteem and to receive compliments, is also a possible motivation for learning. identification regulation. Identified regulation means that we learn because it is important for us. We value learning. Learning for us is a value. It has meaning of our life. It gives meaning of our life. And integrated regulation means that we learn to self-realize our potential. These all types of motivation interacts. And also some other authors define cognitive motive of learning related to striving to acquire new knowledge. Social motives for learning, communicative motives for learning. We learn when we have good social relationships with our peers, teachers, and so on, parents also, because when we feel accepted, we maintain good relationships, we are not disturbed by some problems that could hinder us, and we are able more to focus on learning. And also there could be a financial aspect of motivation. We choose this type of education that is less expensive. For example, we could prefer e-learning because it may be less expensive, and we could choose a specialty that is well paid further.
Yeah, it's as you really, I do agree that it's really a complex phenomena, learning motivation and motivation itself. And also you mentioned it's related with our needs, first of all, because first we have some needs and we want to realize some needs. And today it's quite common or somehow possibly fashionable to speak about we need to follow, or it is obligatory to follow students' needs, for example, children needs, people needs, etc., etc. But what does it mean need, particular need? Every of us, we have different needs, and sometimes not positive needs, for example. And yeah, it's really quite deep question. However, we know, or we think, or it is common to think that children are naturally curious. They were interested. They want to learn something. They want to find more and more knowledge, understanding about surroundings, about environment, about our life, etc. But at least younger students are willing to go to school. They are happy because at least from primary level, for example, teacher, he or she is like a king or queen at school because, oh, my teacher said something, it's 100% true, etc. But quite often educators and educators in general notice that age of children who express reluctance to learn is getting earlier. It means that students losing motivation somehow, or motivation decreasing, and it's quite important to notice or to understand the first signs of a child's demotivation to learn, and to act possible accordingly, how to prevent the situation. What do you think?
So I'm not sure that I will answer directly to the question how to prevent such a situation, as I prefer to answer how to stimulate motivation for learning, because if we stimulate motivation for learning, we could maintain it highly enough to prevent avoiding interest in learning and being unmotivated. So there are different possibilities to stimulate learning motivation, and also different factors that could influence on it to not only to increase or maintain it, but also to diminish it. So,
yes, but for example, why young children are interested, are eager to learn, but school children or school age children are not? And what happens, for example? Where does motivation for learning disappear or disappearing gradually?
Maybe small children, before they go to school, they are not sure what is exactly to be at school, to learn at school. And this is interesting and new. This is a new social role for them. And they may have some expectations. And they may expect that even they will become more adult, like the adult, when they go to school and learn. And later, when they are in school, they understand that there is a lot to learn. And if you learn much, you understand that there is a lot of things that you need further to learn. So they may understand that they cannot become adults as soon as they expected. Also, some other their expectations couldn't be met because I'm not sure what a small child represents about school education, but surely there are some aspects that differ from reality. And when the expectations are not met, the children could become slightly disappointed, and even if the relationships are not good between fellow students. If the students feel that they don't have some close people to share, if the students feel that they are mocked or they could be violated or anything else, there could be some trauma, I think, some traumatic experience related to school that could cause this diminishment in motivation. Because I'm not sure that all students experience this diminishment in motivation. I think about myself when I was a student, and I'm not sure. So I apologize for such an example.
No, it's good. It's very good. Personal examples are very good. Yeah, because
I have heard about some cases when a child wanted very much to go to school, and this child went to school earlier, and later the child had difficulties in the later stages of secondary education. I also have heard about childs who very much wanted to go to school, but their parents didn't agree to send them to school so early. And the child cries a lot, and the parents at the middle of the school year enrolled this child as a student at school, and this child was a successful student. So I think the problem is with some traumatic experience that could diminish learning motivation. It could be even a negative feedback. If the child is disappointed by the teacher, by the feedback, this child could stop learning. I have an acquaintance who said that because once he was assessed with not so high as he expected, because this student just talked during the school hour, and he received less mark than he expected, this student stopped to learn in this subject. So it could be just small traumatic experience. Sometimes the trauma is high. For example, when a student is mocked, is violated, or anything else. I consider also, I have read and I consider that it is important to maintain learning motivation if the students like their teacher. If they like their teacher, it is easier for them to perceive the information given by the teacher and to learn to meet the expectancies of the teacher.
But if not, if
they don't like their teacher, if they find pleasure in arguments, it's okay. If not, they could find some kind of hobby, searching for additional information separately, or they could focus on another subject. It differs, but my opinion is that there is some type of traumatic experience that diminishes learning motivation. Otherwise,
yes, and okay, we do understand that every of us, in particular the child, is shaped by entire environment around him, and different factors make influence. But possible the greatest influence is exerted by his or her parents, and parents' role is undoubtedly important. And parents greatly contribute to the child's responsibility, at the same time motivation to learn, to self-develop, etc., etc. And we expect that parents should encourage, should try to maintain the child's desire to learn from an early age. But if not, we have a lot of examples in our life, if parents do not pay due attention to it or appropriate attention to it. Is it possible that, for example, school can help, or school can play the main role in this?
Yes, in fact, I have found recently information about a longitudinal study that was conducted in USA, in Hawaii, for many years, from 1950s maybe to the 1970s. And the children and later adults who participated in this longitudinal study, they all were from some unsuccessful families, from families with problems. A lot of problems. For example, there was a missing parent, or some quarrels in the family, negative relationships of the family. In all cases, the family didn't approve the efforts of the child, didn't support the child. And this study, I found it was conducted by Werner and a group of scientists, and there were several conclusions. Later in life, some of these high-risk children managed to succeed, and the conclusion was that they managed to succeed when they found some other source of support, typically the teacher. Also, they managed to succeed when they found they were extroverted, they were more communicable, they had more friends to spoke to them, and also when they avoided some types of violation, but managed to have stable families later in life, to find some kind of support. So the type of social support was very important. This support could be a friend, a teacher, later in life partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, and so on. So the main conclusion, I think, was that the family is important, but the family is not so much important if other environment is supportive and friendly to the child. If the child has not found any other support, any source of support, any other type of role model, it is very difficult for the child to overcome some negative experiences and unequal position in the family. So maybe also character is important, some personal qualities like extroversion that is quoted in this study, but the factors both of the environment and personal qualities interact. So there are some happy cases and some cases where the child is not so much resistant. Mental resilience is also important, I think. Some people are very vulnerable, they are very sensitive. Other people say it doesn't matter. For one thing, that another person will consider it as a failure. So how we perceive the things is important. If you perceive the things as a challenge, as some new experience, or if we perceive the things as a threat for us.
Yeah, but for example, nowadays, not only nowadays, we can often hear such words like from school child or from university students. It's somehow also the case. For example, no motivation. I want to do something. I am lazy. I am tired. It's boring for me. Or possible I will do something tomorrow, etc. I think that it's true that such expressions signal to us a lack of motivation, first of all. And it's not surprising, having in mind that generally young generation, not only, but mainly young generation are immersed in virtual environment, for example, social networks, etc. Content displayed on them are more interesting, more friendly, for example, than a good book or to read, and science becomes or learning, traditional as we understanding, is becoming a secondary subject or not a priority. What to do? how to return back? I would say how to return back our kids from virtual space.
So, if we give some rational reasons why something is necessary now or later in life, it could be useful for some people. If we make learning more attractive, using games or virtual reality or some devices or anything else, it could be useful in some cases. And also I consider that not possible we to want to learn all. Everyone of us has some interests, and some people who are not motivated to learn some subject, they could be motivated to learn anything else. So vocational education is a kind of a solution. The person should choose what is interesting for you to choose this type of profession of occupation. So there is maybe not a case lasting for a long time when one person doesn't do anything, just goes out for entertainment. Not this person has some tasks to do. This person chooses some hobby or anything else. So it could be different types of hobby, but I consider that one person may learn at home non-formal education and also learn. Refusing to learn in official institutions doesn't mean that it is obligatory to stop learning at all. Of course, there are some people who say, I will not learn, I will work. But they understand later that for working, it is also necessary to have mastered knowledge, skills, and to have a diploma. And there are some cases when people return back to school later in their life, in all degrees of education. So, to decide that the learning is not attractive is typically an attitude if in the family learning has not been attractive also for the parents, I think. The children is educated in this way that we could do some other things and we could succeed in life. But also deciding that learning is not more attractive could be a temporary phenomenon in human life when we at some ages we want to experience something new, and later we decide if we will continue with these new experiences or we will return to what we learned before. So this is a temporary phenomenon for me. I cannot remember about any person who stopped learning for a long time period. Even when mastering an occupation, this person learns some new skills. And if the person considers that if the person succeeds in life, if the person is satisfied with her or his or her life, if this person is satisfied with what she or he does, if this person is satisfied with his position in society, there is no problem for me if this person has not studied until the end of the course of education. But if the person is not satisfied, if the person herself consider this as a failure and wants to change this person may be stimulated.
Yeah, but okay, Stanislava, it's let's a little bit return back to some previous moments. We know that currently, I'm not going to say that it's like a trend, but quite often we are speaking about, as you also mentioned, that education, or in more narrow terms, learning, teaching should be fun. Should be fun, should be attractive, should be enjoyable. It should be a pleasure for children. They should feel satisfaction with this activity, etc., etc. But possible not all education, or not at all levels of education, it should be fun, or always, I would say, should be fun, or only attractive. But it's not the case. Education somehow is pressure. If we would look from another side, this is a pressure, because it's formally organized in formal institutions. We're not now we're not speaking about informal, for example, informal learning, informal activities, self-learning, for example, etc. No, but formal education, informal institutions as schools, doesn't matter what level, primary school, higher education, university is also a school, right? And only different level. And this is a pressure. Somehow it's pressure. We focus our, let's say, learners, students, learners. Please, you need to learn something. You need to learn this or that. Based on program, based on curricula. This is focused, framed, I would say. And this is pressure. And
yes, it's pressure because it requires from us to put some efforts. And when we have to put some efforts, it's natural to feel pressed. But it depends on how we perceive these efforts that we put, and if there is some time limits. Because if it is required from us to put a lot of efforts for a short time period, if we don't have enough time to master some material, and we know that we could cope better if we have more time, if we have enough time, we become dissatisfied. If we know that we should put these efforts because it is better for us, we have chosen to study this, and we in fact like the result, it is not so negative experience for us. It depends on our perception. For me, time pressure is the most negatively perceived because we know that we may cope if we have more time. But being pressed because some other person requires something from us depends on how we perceive this other person, and if we perceive this as a challenge. If we know that we could put efforts and we could cope, we will feel better. If we are not self-confident, if we don't expect we to succeed, then it will be pressure that is not justified. We don't justify the efforts because we say we will not succeed. It doesn't matter, we put efforts. Yes, education is pressure because otherwise we cannot develop. Howard Gardner, I think, considers that environment should step by step increases the pressure over the individual to develop as a creative personality step by step, and not suddenly, and we should find some support in peers and family and so on. So this pressure in life is inevitable. All stimuli could influence on us as a pressure because we don't want at the beginning their influence, they just happen. It depends if we find some rational justification for this pressure. If we find some positive feelings that this effort that we put create positive feelings from the results, for example, it depends somehow on us how we perceive the requirements over us. And if we make some positive, if we make some possibility to succeed in something that is required from us, we will feel better. So pressure is inevitable, but to feel better, we should not perceive pressure as negative, I think.
Yeah, but not only today, but let's say a few decades, at least in Lithuania, possible not in Lithuania, quite a trend was that students generally after secondary school level, they felt different pressure or also stress from parents, for example, from families, from friends, relatives, in different degree, obviously, that okay, you need to continue your study at university, obligatory at university, otherwise I would say you will become only like a loser, you will not be able to find a good job position in labor market, etc., etc. You obligatory need to enter university to get diploma, and so. And for example, I know many cases, personally, I know many cases where students just simply rejected. No, I'm not going to university. It's not my intention. I want to continue to learn by myself, as self-learning, as self-study. And we can observe in different areas of life, in different, for example, ICT is developing quite fast and changing quite fast. And young people sometimes saying, why do I need to go to university? I'm just learning directly in my position, being at work somewhere, and I do not need just this formal diploma. How to motivate in such a case?
So, one possibility to motivate is financial possibility, I think. If one knows that after finishing the course of study, receiving a diploma, we will find a good job, very well paid job, this person will try to learn. This is the simplest way to motivate, and it is efficient. I know some people who are orphans, and they should they cannot rely on anyone else. So they are obliged to find a well-paid job. And such people study to learn informatics because it is well-paid in Bulgaria. Also, another possibility to motivate a person to study something is to explain some possibilities for realization, or why studying this course is useful, and how this person would personally benefit from this knowledge and skills, because the person doesn't have enough information about some scientific areas, how the knowledge from them could be applied, what will happen when they become students at university, and giving more information could make them to find some benefits for themselves for this type of learning. Also, another type of motivation to motivate people to choose what they firstly didn't want is just to offer them some kind of experience that is rare and that cannot be achieved in other way. For example, practice in another country, or practice in some enterprise organization that is interesting for them, or anything else that is a rare experience. I'm not sure if the referent people for them referent group could also motivate, because if someone else I will go to study this in another city, then his boyfriend, girlfriend, and so on, just friends, would also stay. I also would like to move in this city and to study this. It may depend on personal acquaintances, reference group, and people who we admire, who we would like to be together with them, and so on. So I think personally that the most strongest motivator is financial motivator. if we offer good financial possibilities, good realization after finishing some type of education, we will attract more people in this type of education.
Yes, but it's not a joke. But let's say from my personal experience, usually we have some discussions with students. For example, sometimes students saying, "But okay, why do I need to go to university or to study at university? Because I can earn much more money without university in comparison, for example, with university professor. And university professor in such a case is like a loser. He receives a relatively small salary, and somebody who, with, let's say, who is without university education, without a diploma, can earn 3 times more or salary, 3 times bigger salary in comparison with university professor, for example. It's again motivation.
So I know I have some friends who started their own companies, enterprises. They have graduated only from secondary education, and they have different enterprises. And when they started the enterprises, they realized that they need an economist for accounting, for example. They need being consulted by a lawyer. They need some skills for maintaining good relationships among their workers, and so on. And a lot of their enterprise startups failed. In fact, from my friends with secondary education, just only one has a successful company. But in this case, the whole family helps. So there is a lot of social support. And I think that the best way to understand that you need higher education is to start coping without this education. Then you realize how important are knowledge, skills, and so on, and it's better to acquire them personally than to depend on other people and so on.
Possibly it's again requires much more deeper discussion. Possible yes, possible not. And my next like a question, but it is often said that a child's learning results or students' learning results depends the most not from ability or abilities, but from learning motivation. And I have some doubts with that. And you, because, for example, how to motivate yourself or how to have appropriate learning motivation if my capabilities, I would say, not so good, cognitive abilities not so good, or limited at some extent.
So I don't speak about the case of some illness, but typically it is considered that cognitive abilities could be developed somehow. For example, they could be developed. The simplest way is to study a foreign language. This is a way of developing cognitive abilities, taking another perspective and developing memory and so on. Also, it is possible to solve intelligent tests. When you solve the test, you also train your cognitive abilities. You may train your attention, trying to find some differences between objects. There are different possibilities. So cognitive abilities could develop. There are some studies that people who achieve the same results, a part of them are praised for their efforts. Another part of them are praised for their intelligence, for being smart. Later, when they are offered different tasks, people who are praised for being smart choose simple tasks to maintain their better position, to maintain being praised for being smart. And people who are maintained for being putting more efforts, they can choose more complicated tasks to develop further, to solve more complicated problems and to develop the efforts. So being intelligent, smart, may be necessary for initial level of knowledge, being able to understand the information that you perceive. But being a normal people without any illnesses, disabilities, and so on, maintain that you can develop your cognitive abilities, and it's better the person to be praised for efforts than to be praised for being smart, intelligent, and so on. At least because there will be someone who will be more smarter, will be more intelligent, and so on. But putting efforts depends on us. And we can choose and to train our abilities to put more effort.
Right, Stanislava, I do agree. Totally with you. And just in the beginning, as we discussed, that in my opinion, quite often we focus a little bit in not in correct, I would say, direction. We somehow concentrate on learning motivation, for example, discussing we need to develop, we need to reinforce our students' learning motivation, etc. But, for example, not discussing about cognitive development, how to develop cognitive abilities. For example, it's a fact, it's not a secret. I observed, based on my personal experience, for example, at university, we have some students who are not able to study at that level, at university level, I mean. And as I mentioned, our project related to mathematics and science, also we discussed with colleagues from other countries. It's somehow also the same situation, or a lot of cases, examples that we have at universities some part of students who are not able to study.
Yes, there are some students.
Despite that, and in such a case, how motivation can work? How can we motivate them?
So, I've seen some cases of students who seem not so cognitively able to study. They have some problems, it is obvious, and they have some diagnosis. This could be in secondary education, even university education. And in this case, the fact that the student started to study this type of education means that the student would like to achieve something, to be like his or her peers, to feel confident that the students could achieve something. It is recommendable some individual curriculum, individual plan of study to be offered, to offer some activities that are related to the subject and that could be achieved by the student. It depends on the subject. That there could be simple activities, but I think always we could find something that could be successfully implemented, simple tasks by the student. In the secondary system, educational system in Bulgaria, such students typically don't receive marks until they demonstrate, they manifest some success. And in the case, if they demonstrate some success, in this case, they receive positive mark. So the only approach is individual approach with such students, adapting content to their possibilities.
Okay, Stanislava, but I now I remembered one example possible I'm going to share with you. Okay, it doesn't matter, possible 10 years ago or a little bit more. I had one master student, and he was one man in the group among ladies, and I remember I asked something during first lecture. He was silent, no answer, no any reflection, and possible I asked something again during next lectures, and finally I stopped. He was quite attentive. He took part in all the lectures. And during my after my module, it was educational research methodology module, and during the last lecture, it was final, like a summarizing lecture. I tried to ask again. I asked, dear colleague, possible you want to ask something or to reflect on something? And he said, is it really needed? And nothing more. Okay, it was very, very, very good example.
Okay, so I have the impression that in other countries, Bulgaria, it is expected from students to participate actively in the learning process, and it is expected from the students to ask questions on the content. And in Bulgaria, we have some students who just arrive to attend at every lecture, at every exercise, but it's possible they don't ask any questions. But when we give them some homework to do, they do this homework, and they show good results during the exams. So it depends, I think, on the culture. In my culture, it is not so much expected every student to ask a question to demonstrate an interest. When I was during a summer school, I participated in a summer school in France. It happened that one lecturer asked me, "So why did you attend this summer school? You don't seem interested," like something like this. Because you haven't asked any question. But it was my typical behavior in Bulgaria. The typical behavior of the students is to not ask the questions. They will ask, there should be something extremely fine to happen, because maybe the students consider that all is well explained. They could experience some kind of shame or some other reasons, and if the student understands that the students have some problems, the students will ask. But if the student doesn't find any problems, the students will not ask. So this is the typical situation in Bulgaria. Bulgarian students ask if they have some problems. Otherwise, rarely they ask. Some of them are talkative and like sharing information.
But it's not only okay. I do understand that it's having in mind, for example, a regular mode of studies. But for example, currently, as I mentioned, for example, at least we are continue to work with master students and in some cases bachelor students too in online mode, in distance or remotely. And based on discussion with my colleagues, quite often we experience such a situation that you are speaking, let's say, 1 hour or 2 hours alone without any reaction, and and the question arises, for whom and for what? Because you are speaking alone, communicating alone, you are raising some questions and answering such a questions to yourself without any participation.
I understand you. I have some similar experience, and in this case, as I ask at some time, "Do you hear me? Please inform me." And they either speak or chat with me that they hear. I need just the feedback that they are still listening to me.
Possible listening, possible not. Okay, Stanislava, you mentioned in the beginning when we started about this learning motivation, about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and there is a myth, I would say, is a myth that intrinsic motivation is good and extrinsic motivation is bad or not positive. How could you comment on this?
No, I don't think that there is a bad motivation if it works. Because if the person studies, it could be intrinsically motivated, but it works. The person put efforts and studies. And it is possible this initial motivation, if not considered very good, to be later transformed. So if this type of motivator works, why it should be worse? Why it should be bad? I think so that motivation is combined. For example, I have some friends who graduated from university and they were not able to find a job in their specialty. And they didn't want to start such jobs that didn't require special education. For example, they didn't want to be waitress and so on because they have learned 4 or 5 years and they wanted to practice. In this way, they were forced by their situation to change slightly their specialty. They for example, choose to start learning English as a foreign language because in this way they had more possibilities to find a job, to become English teachers, language teachers, or just to teach their subject in English language. and their motivation was extrinsic. They were forced to find some solution in this situation, but they were successful learners, and then they practiced successfully their job. So if the motivator works, and if the people are not physically punished, I think there is no problem with motivation.
Yes, but for example, based on research, as far as I know, research studies that all cognition is 75, possible around 75 or 80% based on intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic motivation. What do you think?
Sure how many percent is due to intrinsic motivation, but in fact, extrinsic motivation could be transformed into intrinsic motivation.
How?
One starts learning something because being forced by situation. This person puts some effort, and this person finds out that he's successful or she's successful. She or he could meet the criteria defined in the educational system, and because receiving success, this person receives also recognition and started feeling positive emotions. And when the person starts feeling positive emotions related to the result of learning, these positive emotions could be related later to the learning process, because when we are good at something, we slightly start liking what we do because we achieve success, I think. So it is possible to be transformed slowly, extrinsic motivation into intrinsic motivation. We could find some positive aspects of what we do.
But quite often, mainly if we are speaking about children, about kids, school children, learning because they need to. I go to school, for example, because my parents want me to. I need to learn something, poem, for example, because the teacher told me to do this. I will prepare my homework because otherwise my mother won't let me play on my computer, etc., etc., etc.
Small children, they don't have enough developed skills for self-control, self-organization, self-regulation. That is why they are taught what to do first in their life, and in this way they acquire social experience. And being told what to do, they understand what is acceptable and desirable in the society. And because they do what they are required to do, our society develops. And they don't demonstrate deviant behavior and so on. They don't drop out from school and so on. So first in life, every human being is told what to do, and later, when the skills for self-regulation are developed, for self-control, the person becomes able to organize own daily activities, and the person could be relied on to be enough conscientious to take on some responsibilities and to behave responsibly. So it is natural that the small children are taught what to do, and it is good if the children find what they are required to do interesting and they enjoy. If they don't find it is interesting and they enjoy, maybe they will find something else that could be attractive for them.
And in continuation, the possible all know quite well, or at least we know that most people are attracted by desire for novelty, including acquisition of new knowledge. And for example, nowadays we're speaking about different innovations. If we can use this term in this context, something new, something not common, something surprising, etc., etc. This is like a huge burst of dopamine in the brain, and a new game, for example, new thing to learn, new original lesson or new lecture, for example, not typical lecture, for example, if we are speaking about students, etc., etc. And in other words, an original, attractive message, surprise, stimulates the learner, arouse curiosity, stimulates motivation, etc. What do you think? Is it false or not?
So maybe everything that is not expected, that is a new stimulus, may stimulate our attention and attract our attention and may make us think more about something and starting being interested in something and learn something. So something that is new, that is unexpected, may stimulate learning motivation. Also, something that is presented as attractive, that provokes, that makes us laugh, that is presented with sense of humor, also may stimulate learning because we feel better and it becomes more interesting for us. So if it depends if the information is new, if it is presented interestingly, if it is presented funny, these are appropriate conditions for stimulating learning.
Okay, but yeah, in this case, we need creative lecturers, creative teachers, not stereotypical teachers. I would say not regular teachers and lecturers, in order to keep good motivation, I would say.
Maybe the teacher has the vocation to become a teacher. At some part of teaching experience, this teacher will try different types of teaching to see the result. This teacher could desire to change the routine of teaching, and this teacher could be interested in more innovative methods of teaching, in using creativity in this teaching process, because every one of us at some moment of life wants something new. And this could be some new experiences even at work.
Yeah, for example, to work remotely,
Yes.
to work remotely also we need to learn. We need to learn despite that in, I would say, solid age, having in mind us, it doesn't matter. Okay, and but for example, returning back to school level in relation to motivation, learning motivation, for example, in primary school, traditional students have one teacher, one class teacher for some years. In case of Lithuania, 4 years, because primary school lasts 4 years. And after primary school, students continue in lower secondary, later on upper secondary school level, and they meeting different teachers, different personalities. And in this case, decrease of motivation to learn, possibly it's not related only with age. For example, as teenagers, we know that teenagers usually losing motivation to learn. This is specific period in human life, etc. But possibly it's connected also with teachers, different teachers.
So, shift in motivation, learning motivation, primary school, later degrees, I think maybe connected to requirements the students. In Bulgaria, I think at primary school, there are not marks as numbers, and the students are praised. And finishing primary school, they receive their marks, and later, at the next degree of education, the student start receiving marks regularly by different teachers. They interact with more teachers, and they should adapt to the requirements of different teachers. So first they were praised and not given negative marks. Later they suddenly started to be assessed maybe more realistically, or more according to their performance at the moment, not according to their performance for a long time period. So the shift in learning motivation could be expected, but I consider that if the other students are not informed about the mark received by one person, it could improve the situation, because in such a way envy or mocking could be avoided. So if only the person, the student knows about his or her mark and not the other fellow students, this person could feel better, could be calm, that he will not be commented, or she will not be commented by the peers. So also, if we develop the skills for reflection and self-criticism, to reflect on own activities and to become more critical to oneself and to evaluate oneself more realistically, we may avoid such a sudden shift in motivation. So it is useful to find some ways to develop reflective skills in students from the earliest level of education.
And you see that gradually we shifted to our last topic for our discussion about teachers, about teacher training, and about teachers' preparedness to teach, to educate our young generation. And quite often today we are speaking about, at least in Lithuania, but possible not in Lithuania, about so-called new generation of teachers. And what does it mean, new generation of teachers? This is obviously knowledge and competence of a subject and specialization, for example. And one more quite important component, this is research, teacher as researcher. He or she needs to be familiar with research studies and to have at some level as researcher competence to perform small scale, for example, studies, observations, and other kinds of research in schools in relation to their practice, etc., etc. Ability to plan, to organize, to conduct applied research, for example, to identify different problems, learning barriers, for example, evaluate data, and to organize teaching process based on research, or to organize in general educational practice based on research. For example, recently we received one manuscript for possible publication in our journal in relation to this topic. How often, for example, teachers use latest research studies, research results? Are they familiar with latest research in their field or not, etc., etc.? Quite large discussion, and very interesting paper currently is under review process. And what do you think about this so-called new generation of teachers, and from your perspective?
I think the idea is good, but this idea has a big enemy, a big problem to meet with, and this problem is called bureaucracy, administration, documentation. I think that today we are required to do so many reports, to prepare so many documentation, that we don't have enough time to do our main job. And this is the problem. There is no problem the teacher to become a researcher. And the teacher, in fact, does this work because the teacher is interested why the results of his or her students are this, and the teacher tries to find some decisions to improve their results. So this is a type of research of diagnostics. The teacher could benefit from this research, but the teacher often doesn't have enough time because the teacher has to fill in a lot of documents, as in paper and as in electronical way. Also, there is so many complicated bureaucratic work that is required just only to report some results, and I'm not sure if anyone is interested really in these reports, and if doing these reports is more useful than practicing to improve ourselves, our skills. So these reports are very complicated, at least because they are required in paper and electronically. Just one way of reporting is enough for me, I think. And if the teacher has enough time, this teacher could do different aspects of his or her job. The teacher could be a scientist, could be a researcher, could present scientific work, could be a teacher to practice his job, could also be a learner continuously, and so on. But the teacher needs time, and this time should be taken from preparing reports, not from personal life and family life, I think. So the teachers should be facilitated. And there are some possibilities to facilitate them. One of them is to avoid so many documentation. Another possibility is to appoint more teachers and the classes to be less in size, not so many students in class, because now in Bulgaria there are sometimes 30 students in class. I consider it very much. The teacher should organize well the class, and when the teacher teaches, gives lectures, explains, some students, for example, speak, other students cannot hear from the last part of the classroom and something else. So the classes should be small in number. Administrative work should be reduced. Staff should be increased, salary should be increased, and so on. It depends on the policy of the state, how to facilitate the teachers. The teachers should not only be obliged to do this and this and this and this and so on. The teachers should be facilitated in their work. And also there is an aspect with scientific studies that I would like to comment. And in my practice, sometimes I find some contradictory results. One study recommends one thing, another study recommends another thing. Of course, they may have used different methods for data collection, different samples, different control of other variables, confounding variables, and so on. But I think that for solving such contradictions found in scientific literature, we need more meta-analysis that could summarize the existing studies in one area, could says finally what is recommendable, what is not, summarizing different experiences on the same topic.
Yeah, but it's this is another deep discussion. It will be a deep discussion related to research, because this is also like a trend, or for example, when you're preparing a report on particular study or research, like a manuscript, or doesn't matter, or presentation or poster, you feel like pressure that you need to discuss from different sides, from different perspectives, to make comparison pros and cons, for example, with existing literature. And sometimes I'm arguing, why do we need to make such a comparison, and in order to show what our ability to compare different sources, for example, as you mentioned, in many cases contradictory sources, or with contradictory results, etc. But this is like a play. We are playing something, but without, I don't know, reasonable outcome, etc. Okay, and possible we will not go into more details or larger discussion in relation to teacher education in Bulgaria. I think that we would need another discussion for that, because a lot of questions, for example, having in mind the teacher education model in general, for example, in Lithuania, from time to time, we're trying to introduce new model, so-called model for teacher education. And currently one model is under discussion, I would say. And Lithuania some years ago announced like a national idea. It was public event, like a mini competition. People made different suggestions, for example, and one of the national idea was that teacher profession should be the most prestigious profession in our country, and up to 2025. this is really a short period of time, and I hope that it's not possible to achieve this. Generally, it's good result, good idea, but how to reach, how to make this in reality, to have teacher profession as the most prestigious, it's really difficult. And what about your country, about Bulgaria? How would you rate prestige of teaching profession?
So, a lot of years ago, during the time of my grandparents' parents, the teaching profession was very prestigious, and the teacher was very respected, because the teacher was respected in the family. And if the family respects the teacher, the parents respect the teacher, so the child will be educated to respect other people and the teacher. Later, there was a period where, as I may have said, I don't remember exactly, that the teaching profession was not very well paid, and the prestige of teaching profession diminished. And sometimes in the media there were some cases where the teachers were presented as victims or violators or perpetrators and so on. So it depends on how media presents the profession, the occupation, and how it depends on the salary, on the social status. Now, teaching profession, I think, starts gaining again its prestige, and it is partly due to the salary. Several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I knew a person who refused to apply for to being a student in education, to become a teacher, because student said, I remember how we behaved towards our teacher. I don't want the student to behave in this way with me. And this person refused to apply as a teacher. Now, more and more students apply to be teachers, because a study is free, it's not paid, and the teaching profession later is well paid. And also, if the family respect the students, respect not only the students but also the teachers. If the family says that the teacher should be respected and the teacher position deserves to be listened to, and the teacher should be followed and should be a model of behavior and something like this. If the parents say that the teacher is not guilty for students' failure or something like this, if the parents sometimes ask the student to say I am sorry to the teacher for something, then the teaching, the prestige, reputation of teaching profession increases. So it depends mainly on family education and on media, how media present teaching occupation. And media will present the facts. Media will say that will present teaching occupation as being well paid. And if we are well paid in contemporary modern society, we are respected, because rich people are respected in some way. So, and this is one possibility, how media presents the occupation, how parents, what is the parental attitude towards teachers. If the parents want to cooperate with the teacher, there are less problems. The parents don't want to cooperate the teacher, if the parents find the teacher guilty for their child's success at school, the problems start, because there is just one person guilty. The guilt is common, maybe, to say the child has not put enough effort, the teacher might not have explained well, or the parents have not put enough attention, have not paid enough attention to their child. Different complex factors. So no one is guilty alone.
Okay, and my possible possible provocative question. We understand that all of us are different, and we are different people, different personalities, and we need different education possible. And my typical question: what education for what life? Do you have an answer?
personal preferences for education should not be regarded as a recommendation or scientific opinion or something like this. This is only my personal preference. And I prefer e-learning online education. This is what I prefer as a type of education because I can learn from lecturers in Spain, in Canada, and so on. I have participated in different online courses offered by different lecturers in different parts of the world, and I participated at home. If I should pay for travel and so on, yes, it's good, but I don't have so much money. So I really like e-learning. E-learning gives more possibility to demonstrate using different means. E-learning gives different possibilities to give feedback in time, to be reminded, to receive some clues, even to communicate and to think carefully before to inform someone about something. So my personal preferences are for e-learning. This is
Okay, this is again it will be large discussion because no one or no common answer. What education for what life? Stanislava, you as a best, okay, I'm going to say best psychologist or well-known psychologist. Please let's return back to learning motivation. Do you have or can you share with some possible, I don't know, suggestions or recommendations, for example, for teachers? What would you recommend? Let's say 3-5 steps or in relation to learning motivation, like an essence.
So I would recommend the teachers just to give the impression that they really like what they do. If they give such impression, then the students are more interested in what is so attractive in what the teachers does, and it is more possible that the student to be more motivated. The student is motivated by a model of behavior. If the teacher is interested, the student may become more engaged. Also, I could recommend the teachers to not accept what happens as influencing on them personally as insult, as a type of insult or something deliberate that could harm them, because sometimes the student behave in such a way because they don't know what to do in some situation. They don't know how to express themselves way, and sometimes there is a type of misunderstanding. So the teachers should not accept the students' behavior as deliberate against them, but they should accept the student behavior as an experimentation with different roles and trying to find some successful behavioral models. So the teacher should demonstrate such behavioral models and should become more resistant, more resilient, not so vulnerable to the opinion of other people, including the students. And also the teachers should be more self-confident, and they should think if they would behave in the same way with their proper children, with their own children, to be sure morally that they behave as they should do.
Okay, and is it possible to apply the same I would say rules to university lecturers?
Yes, I think it's possible, but maybe everyone commits some errors, and we learn our whole life how to become better teachers, lecturers, and so on.
Okay, time is running quite fast, and really it's quite fast, and it's really nice discussion, but but we need to finalize. And indeed, thank you so much for an interesting discussion and for sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your insights. And personally, I am convinced, obviously, I am convinced that it's useful and important in many ways. And I wish you big success in your personal academic life, in your future, and I think that we will soon find other possibilities and other significant topics for discussion, for common interest, and it possible could be significant not only for us but for others interested in psycho-educational issues in general. And as we discussed before this meeting, for example, quite burning and important topic is assessment or evaluation in education, and possible we will organize our discussion from psychological point of view in relation to assessment. Possible, Stanislava, you want also to add something or finalize or summarize our discussion, please?
Thank you for your invitation and for your questions that were very interesting, and you are a very good communicator, I'd like to say, and thank you for organizing such events. This is very nice experience for me to discuss with you such things. I hope that they will be interesting and useful for some of our audience, and I wish you also success in what you do, and also personal happiness, and all the best.
Thank you, Stanislava. We will put also some links in description of this discussion in this video, and interested people will be able to find possible your latest research studies and to read, to be familiar with this, because you are working a lot and you're doing different studies, different research in psychology, in different areas. And I'm pretty sure that it will be interesting for many people, for scholars, and it will be possible to find and to be familiar in more details with your activity, with your work. It is obvious that, again, time is limited. Time is limited, and we need to finalize, and people are not interested in long discussions and long videos. They need like a chunk, you know, with small pieces, small and short videos, attractive, etc. Okay, but anyway, my personal opinion is that it's at some extent it's useful, at some extent it's relevant, from different aspects and from different perspectives. Thank you very much, Tesla.
Thank you also to you. Thank you for this possibility to participate in this discussion.